Adel Al Jubeir, when did you come back to Saudi Arabia?
I've always been living here. I was born here. My heart was always here. But if you're looking at in terms of the crisis, I arrived the first week in August, a few days after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait.
Intending to do what at that time?
Well, it was accompanying a press pool, and I was supposed to be available for briefings or background information and so forth. The original press pool was composed of 17 people. Within 3 days, the number went up to 60. Within a week, we had 150 people here. And another week later, that number doubled. By the end of the month, there were over 500 journalists in Saudi Arabia.
And you stayed? And you're staying for how long?
I have no idea. I will stay for as long as I'm required here. Frankly, I didn't expect that it would be such a long assignment, but we have to do what we have to do.
Personally, your reaction to seeing this military buildup in your country?
Well, the military buildup is justified. An aggression took place on August 2nd. Iraq invaded Kuwait. The world condemned the aggression. The world is doing something about it. In Saudi Arabia, we called upon our friends in the world to come to our assistance, and I think they came through with flying colors.
But what does it feel like for you, a citizen of this country, to drive around and see such a large military presence?
It instills a lot of confidence in me. It makes me feel proud that the world responded to Saudi Arabia the way it has. I think that says something about the country. It says something about how people view Saudi Arabia, how people look at Saudi Arabia. It takes away any fear we would have had regarding an Iraqi aggression against Saudi Arabia. I think most Saudis are very confident now that such a thing is not going to happen, and overall we're very positive.
Back in the States, we read stories from time to time about concerns among citizens of your country about the U.S. being the lead in this buildup, and concerns that the U.S. presence is a permanent one. Are those fears justified?
I don't think so. I think that that tends to be exaggerated. It was Saudi Arabia that invited the United States in. We invited them in for a specific purpose, to help defend Saudi Arabia. The U.S. came through with flying colors, as well as 27 other nations, whether they have troops on the ground or on ships in the sea. Once the objectives are achieved, then the troops will return back to their home countries. I don't think that Americans want to see their boys remain in Saudi Arabia for longer than they have to. I don't think it's reasonable of us to expect American boys to remain in Saudi Arabia for longer than they have to. So there's really a meeting of the mind.
The objectives being achieved, what are those objectives as you see it right now?
Well, it's very simple. Saddam Hussein has to withdraw completely and unconditionally from Kuwait. The legitimate government of Kuwait, headed by the Emir, has to be restored. Issues such as reparations to Kuwait and what have you have to be looked into. And once that's achieved and once the region is stabilized, then I think everybody can say that the objectives were achieved.
You've made a bit of news here recently, as we're recording this on this Wednesday, that by saying that you believe at this point war seems inevitable. You believe that?
Well, I don't think that war is inevitable. I think the choice is entirely with the Iraqi leadership. The world has taken a position, and the position was very clear. It's withdraw, return of the legitimate government. And once that happens, or if it should happen, then we will return to, I guess, a more peaceful situation. Now, the occupation of Kuwait cannot be tolerated. It cannot go on indefinitely, and something has to be done about it. This is especially the case when one hears about the rape and pillage that is taking place in the country. The Iraqis are literally dismantling Kuwait as we speak, and that cannot go on forever. That's certainly going to be a factor in any decisions that are taken by the world vis-a-vis the Iraqi leadership. And I think while all of us would like to see Iraq withdraw peacefully, our patience is limited, and if they don't withdraw peacefully, then I'm sure the world will find other ways.
What would the outbreak of hostilities mean for your country?
Well, I think now we're entering the realm of speculation, and even though the Middle East is an area that has produced numerous prophets, I'm certainly not one of them. I don't think that it would be appropriate to comment on potential military activities, but what I can tell you is that the Saudi people are very secure. The Saudi people have a lot of inner strength. The Saudi people will deal with whatever might come out of this crisis, and I think they will deal with it very positively.
In the recent days, just with the present situation, are the lives of ordinary Saudi citizens at all compromised by the presence of the troops?
I don't think so. I think Saudi Arabia has been at the crossroads of civilizations for thousands of years. We have had Muslims coming from all over the world to Saudi Arabia over the past 1400 years. 1/5 of the world is Muslim, so in theory we've had people from most countries in the world come to Saudi Arabia. We're used to dealing with foreigners. We've always had a large presence of foreigners living in Saudi Arabia. Every year approximately 2 million Saudis travel abroad, so we're used to dealing with it with foreigners. Here in the Eastern Province we've had at least 40,000 American civilians living and working with Saudis. Many of them are second generation and third generation residents in Saudi Arabia. So I think that the issue of the cultural impact on Saudi Arabia is exaggerated.
Would you spend a few minutes explaining, if you could, how this operation works? You mentioned that there are some 500 journalists. Is that about the number now that are working?
Well, the total number of journalists that came into Saudi Arabia since August 2nd is in excess of 1,200. The highest number we've ever had at one point were, I think, 550 or 560. I think now the numbers have dropped into the 300 range. The way we operate here is, this is our Joint Information Bureau. We have a section for the American military in order to take people to see the US troops. We have a section for the Saudi military, and we have a section for the Saudi Information Ministry. Then we also have Aramco, which was generous enough to contribute personnel in order to help out with any journalists who want to visit the oil facilities. And we have our telephone company, and we have several other corporations that have pledged personnel or drivers, cars, whatever, to help out. Journalists come to the Joint Information Bureau, they sign up with us, we give them their credentials, and then they can see what's going on, what interviews would be available, what officials would be available for interviews, what kind of visits are scheduled, and they either sign up with those visits, or if they want to do something on their own, they can let us know and we can make it happen for them. If somebody wants to go visit an oasis, or if somebody wants to go visit a camel market, or if somebody wants to go see an oil refinery, if somebody wants to meet Saudi pilots, those are things that we can arrange for them on an individual basis.
You're used to dealing with the American media. What's it like dealing with them on your own turf here?
I think I'm just a simple Bedouin. I'm not used to dealing with the American media. I think that the American media, as well as everybody else coming to Saudi Arabia, overall the experience has been positive. I think it was mutual. We had a lot of times we had to adjust one way or another. Things may not happen as quickly as some journalists want in Saudi Arabia. Some of the journalists are a little bit more pushy than most Saudis are used to. But I think those are little problems that we've ironed out in the first few weeks.
When the American media asks for a request to be able to visit typical Saudi cultural things, what kinds of things are they asking for? And do you think that their requests accurately reflect Saudi Arabia as you know it?
Oh, I think we've had visits to Saudi families, we've had visits to Saudi schools, we've had visits to the souks, which are our version of the marketplace. We've had visits to the camel market, we've had visits to oasis, we've had visits to the desert, we've had visits to hospitals, you name it, and we've got it here.
When you say no, why do you say no?
I don't think we've ever said no.
So anything anyone wants to see, you find a way to get them to it?
Oh yeah, where there's a request, we will do our best to accommodate it, and where there's a will, there's a way. I don't think that there have been very few requests which we could not provide for journalists.
As you helped coordinate this press effort, what are your concerns about the information getting out about your country?
Well, I don't think personally I have any concerns, nor do I think most Saudis have any concerns. We have a good story to tell. We have a very rich country in terms of culture, in terms of values, in terms of we're very proud of our people. We are very proud of the things that we were able to accomplish over the past 20 years. So there's really nothing in Saudi Arabia that we're not proud of, and we would love for the world to know more about us. I like to tell my friends that before all of this happened, people used to think of Saudi Arabia as oil, sand and camels. Well, those days are over. People come, they realize we have a fantastic infrastructure, they realize there's a lot more to Saudi Arabia than just oil, sand and camels. They realize we have a culture that goes back several thousand years. They realize the economic advancement of the country. They realize the cultural and the geographic diversity of the country, and those are things that people, in a lot of cases, were not aware of.
In long term, that awareness, you don't think will lead to some changes within your country?
I think it will lead to changes in the perception by outsiders of Saudi Arabia. A lot of the perceptions that people have about Saudi Arabia stem from a lack of knowledge of it. Here we've had a lot of journalists with first-hand exposure to Saudi Arabia and to the Saudi people, and as you can tell from the stories that have come out on Saudi Arabia, overall they've been very good.
When this whole period is behind the world and perhaps more people having their interest piqued want to travel here, will it be easy for them to do that?
I think it's always been easy for people to travel to Saudi Arabia. This is another one of the myths about visiting Saudi Arabia. Because we have a large presence of foreigners in Saudi Arabia, and because our population is very small, we've had to have requirements in terms of people visiting. So if you want to visit a Saudi, you are always welcome. If you want to come to Saudi Arabia because of work or because of jobs, you're always welcome. In terms of tourism, frankly, we've really never had a demand for tourism. We're not seeking tourists because of financial considerations, and not too many tourists wanted to come to Saudi Arabia. I'm sure that as the demand for tourism increases, we will find ways of making it happen.
That would be a happy circumstance, you'd think?
Well, I think anything that helps build bridges cross-culturally at this time is going to be beneficial. We have to realize that the world is becoming an increasingly smaller place. It's no longer as isolated as it was before. The revolution in terms of communications, the revolution in terms of just understanding each other, the increase in tolerance, the end of the Cold War, all of those are factors that are going to make the world a smaller place. We're now much more tolerant of each other. The fact that we're different, the fact that we have different religions doesn't mean that we can't get along. It just means you accept us for what we are and we accept you for what we are, and there's nothing wrong with both of us inhabiting this planet together.
Back to current policy, if we can, for a minute. Could you please clarify or explain what it is that the Saudi government is paying for in terms of Operation Desert Shield?
Well, a lot of those I can't get into.
Why not?
Several reasons. Some of it I'm not privy to. Some of it may not be appropriate to do. But what I can tell you is that we are certainly carrying our share. We are taking care of a lot of the logistics, a lot of the in-country support. For the troops, we're we're helping out in terms of providing financial assistance to countries that were affected by the sanctions and by the blockade. We've put a strain in terms of our oil production to live up to our responsibilities to provide stable energy markets for the world. And so that's, in general terms, that has been it. I don't think that you will find any American military leader or any top American politician who will have any concerns with Saudi Arabia not carrying its weight during this operation.
What about the influx of refugees into your country? How have you been handling that?
Well, you cannot help but feel sorry for people who have lost their country in a brutal war. And in Saudi Arabia, we have a tradition of hospitality. And we look at the Kuwaiti people as essentially our brothers. A lot of the families are cross-border. A lot of the tribes in Saudi Arabia have relatives in Kuwait and vice versa. The two countries have been very close since anybody can remember. We have when our Kuwaiti brothers came to Saudi Arabia, we've opened up our homes to them. We have provided hotel space for them. We have put them up in terms of housing. We have tried to make their plight as comfortable as possible, realizing that no matter how comfortable we make it for them, it's not going to be the same as being in your own house. And it's our hope that they will be able to return to their country as soon as possible, because I think that's basically what they want. But aside from the housing aspects, we've also opened our schools to them. A lot of Saudi families have taken in Kuwaiti families into their homes. Anything we can do for them, we have tried to do for them. I think that you will not find anybody, certainly not in Saudi Arabia, and I hope not anywhere else in the world, who would want to go through an experience similar to the one that the Kuwaitis are going through.
I'm just curious, if the Kuwaiti children are side by side in the schools, is the dialect that they speak of Arabic the same? Are they easily understood?
Yes, the difference in the dialect between Kuwait And Saudi Arabia is similar to the difference in dialect between Richmond, Virginia and Washington, D.C. Even the culture, the manners, the value systems are essentially the same.
And for yourself, you wish to go back to your job at the embassy in the United States?
Well, I'm doing my job. So long as I can contribute something to what's going on here, I think I will do so. It's if my superiors think I'm doing a good job, I'm sure they will want me to continue. If not, then they will find other things for me to do. At the end of the day, it's like I said, I'm just a simple Bedouin trying to do my job as best as I can.